Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast. Today, we're going to be talking to Erin Herrera. Now, she's an expert on vehicle importation, both ways across the border. So from USA to Canada and from Canada to the USA. Now, you might say, who cares, Tom? I don't need to do that. Well, you might. And the reason is it's hard to find vehicles. It's hard to find good vehicles right now. And especially for Americans buying from Canada, you might be able to get yourself a deal because the Canadian dollar is not at par with the American dollar. Right now, approximately 25% haircut buying in Canada using the US dollar. Or to say it another way, if a Canadian wanted to buy $1, it would cost them $1.25. Now, it's going to work out a little bit differently when you do, your own calculations at your own time, but it's certainly worth looking at. The other thing to keep in mind is, let's say you're in New Orleans and you're trying to buy a Sprinter van and it's 70 grand. Well, can you buy that same Sprinter van out of Canada, but it has more features and less miles? They're going to call them kilometers up there, but you know what I mean? So you could actually be getting a better deal dollar for dollar by buying cross-border. So then that raises the question, how do I get that thing back? That's what Erin's here to talk about. Stay tuned. I know you're going to love it. Erin Herrera, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. It's nice to be on the phone or on the Zoom with you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, I scoured the earth. I scoured the earth to find you. You're unique. You know everything there is to know about bringing vehicles back and forth across the border.
Yes, I actually do. I think.
I like that.
For the most part.
That is very good confidence. And you and I had a pre-interview. We talked a couple of weeks ago about doing this show, and I told you who the audience is. It's the owners of construction businesses. These are people out there who are like just literally through the strength of their own conviction are building businesses every which way they can. And they don't know about the little tips and tricks, because people have been bringing cars across the border to save money or get specialty vehicles both ways across the Canada-US border for a long time. And people might not know about that. So we should dig in. And since you're the expert, I'm holding up my coffee with my pinky out. That's my formal way of doing that. We thought we'd have you here to talk about it. Let me start with the question that everybody knows I'm going to ask. Erin Herrera, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these construction business owners all around the world?
Well, I'm first I'd like to say thank you for having me on. I'm the Vice President and licensed customs broker of Davidson & Sons USA. We have presence on both sides of the border. There's Davidson & Sons Canada and Davidson & Sons USA. And I'm actually, I've been the licensed broker here for 6 years. It's quite an ordeal to obtain your broker's license.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's one of the most difficult trade exams up there with the bar, really. And so it usually takes people about 3 or 4 times to actually.
That's stressful. Okay.
Yeah, and it's only offered 2 times a year. So you're studying this huge book with all of the different tariffs and regulations and. So anyway, the one thing that I think is interesting about my particular situation is that Davidson & Sons, the company I work for now, used to be Avion Customs Brokers on the U.S. side. And I worked for Avion starting in about 1987 when I was going to university. And I was just doing it as a part-time job.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward to 2016, I had moved away. I came back to Seattle and I started working for them again. And then we were acquired by Davidson & Sons, who's also another, Avion was a family-run company.
Right.
And Davidson & Sons is a 100-year-old family-run company. And so they were looking for a presence on the U.S. side that would treat the clients, sort of approach them the same way that we did. So we were 2 family-run companies. And anyway, we really value the customer service aspect of what we provide.
Well, yeah. and this would be, most people don't know that this even exists. Like, I know you said that the exam is hard, but most people listening are going to be completely surprised that this goes on. And so today I want to dig into, why do people bring vehicles across the border? You know, what, I know you make it easy, but how do you do it? You know, is it worth doing? And actually, before we even get into that, are you based in Seattle, or where are you based?
I'm based in Seattle, but I've
Love
actually, I've lived and worked in Canada. I mean, I've lived in Whitehorse, Montreal, Nova Scotia, Calgary,
All the hot
Toronto,
spots.
and I've actually been a broker, freight forwarder. I've been in the industry for over 30 years, on both sides of the border. So
Okay.
that is helpful, actually, because, well, it's fun because when people call, usually they're calling me from either Canada or the US. And we do have a lot of, you asked if it was worth it. I would say that it seems worth it to, because we do this so often. We're getting so many calls, most often about people that are trying to buy either vehicles or heavy equipment,
Right.
Machinery.
Right.
Into the US, purchasing it in Canada.
Well, and do you know why that's happening?
Well,
so everybody listen very, very carefully. The Canadian dollar is very low compared to the American dollar.
Correct.
Right. So at the time of this recording, it would cost a Canadian $1.25 to buy an American dollar. That's a significant savings. So if you're going to buy a 5-ton truck or a Mercedes Sprinter van, whatever it is, and if you're going to buy it in your local market for X dollars, you can buy it for X minus 25% in Canada. Probably. I mean, you have to do your due diligence and you have to deal with a reputable company. But then if you've acquired that deal, you just saved yourself a ton of cash. There's no capital like saved capital.
Right. And I think if anyone is looking into going down this route, definitely the main thing to keep in mind is that you should contact me. And that is not because I want the business. I mean, of course, I love helping people with this particular situation of vehicles, because people can get themselves in trouble where they just, I don't know why, but people don't seem to realize that, especially I find on the West Coast, people just think, oh, I'm just going to go to Vancouver and purchase a truck and drive it across the border and not claim it. And you can't believe how many people that we have call us that have already done that. And so then I'm having, that situation is much more difficult to unwind, because there are some situations that I can help guide somebody through and possibly avoid having a situation where they can't license and register the vehicle once they've already brought it to the US, pretty much illegally, because they just think, oh, well, I own it now. And I mean, I know that the people that contact me that are in that situation, they're so sincere. They haven't meant to do anything wrong.
Yeah,
they just didn't know.
It'd be like driving across the border to go to Costco and buy a brick of cheese. Why would you need to do paperwork for that brick of cheese? But you actually need to do paperwork. And I guess in this situation, paperwork, let me rephrase that. Knowing the paperwork, which is your trick, you know which paperwork when, that really matters.
Correct. And I'll just tell you that, so I think that some people that actually are a little bit more informed and know that they might need to contact me at some point down the road, or a broker. But what I usually have them do, like, let's say somebody contacts me and they know enough to contact me before they're in the market for a 5-ton truck.
Right.
So then I can tell them that they need to make sure that, and I can help do this. I help them make sure that the labeling on the vehicle is admissible into the US currently. So what I would have them do is send me photos of the EPA and DOT label. This is another thing. Those are two separate government agencies. And oftentimes people just seem to combine them into one. So they think it's one label, but it really has to be, it has to have the correct US admissible verbiage on the EPA label, which is usually, that one is not as difficult, and the DOT label.
Right. So I remember in our pre-interview, what I left thinking is how specific it comes down to what the language is on that sticker, whether this
Right.
deal's going to happen or not. So I do need to talk to you, like an automobile customs broker, an expert on this, because if I go buy a good deal, but it doesn't have the right sticker, of all things, a 10-cent sticker, if the sticker's not right, I can't bring that thing anywhere. I can't, I can't cross the border with it.
And another misconception is that some people know too much and it gets them into trouble. So this misconception is that vehicles that are manufactured in the US, and you can tell by the VIN number, they're specific, if it starts with a 1 or a 5, it usually indicates that it's manufactured in the US.
Trick.
Yeah. And so
that's interesting.
That doesn't necessarily mean that the vehicle is admissible back into the US, because a lot of these vehicles, vehicles for personal use as well, they're manufactured specifically for the Canadian market. And there are actually some manufacturers that for business purposes, this is not an option, but for individual purposes, if you're willing to say that you are going to use the vehicle, import it into the US and use it for your individual personal use, and you're importing it under your name, then you can try to obtain what's called a letter of conformity from the manufacturer. And most manufacturers will supply this. And basically the letter of conformity says, even though it's labeled for sale in the Canadian market, on the date of manufacture, this vehicle, blah, 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 it does actually meet US
standards,
Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, or it's FMVSS, EPA and DOT. If you have that, you can actually import it into the US under your personal name for personal use only, but you can't sell it.
Oh, well, that's a big deal, unless you live on a ranch or a farm and it's going to die there.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, you have to understand that. Now we discussed this too. There are other options. I can provide all those options to people that find themselves in this particular situation, but that doesn't necessarily mean like absolutely no. There are other options and other routes.
And you've seen these situations time and again. Actually, are you able to share any stories? Like, is there that person that just brings vehicles across, not a broker or a dealer, but like a business person who's running a company and they're bringing heavy equipment or 5-ton trucks or Sprinter vans back and forth?
Well, I can tell you a story about a situation that ended up badly for a pretty large company. And so this is also something to look out for. And that is that this company had acquired a fleet of heavy vehicles, similar to like a dump truck. So they had them in the US, they had exported them into Canada. And then I think they had actually had some modifications done while in Canada. And in fact, I think one of the modifications was having the labels updated to meet Canadian requirements.
Oh, probably quite expensive.
Right. And so they, within the required period of time, they were going to send them back to the US. Come to find out, when I went to review the photos of the labels, they actually should have never been in the US to begin with. They were not admissible. They weren't US admissible vehicles. So I had like a long
Oh my God.
conversation with an EPA official. And I mean, super helpful. Like those people just know so much information, but they couldn't bring them back unless they had the manufacturer update the labels, which can be done. But
Right.
anyway, it wasn't what they expected. And so it kind of, it really delayed their project.
Well, and as we know, and everybody listening knows, if you need a piece of equipment, it's not for fun. Like if you need that dump truck, or if you need that forklift, or if you need that van,
Right.
you need it. It's not a toy. And so you need it, and you're hoping to get it within X amount of weeks, and you schedule jobs against that. You tell your crew they're going to be driving that. Yeah.
Well, and you've purchased it. So basically, in this case, it wasn't even that they had sent that it had been sold back to a Canadian company, to another Canadian company, and was being sold back. They owned those vehicles.
Oh, that's right, because they were their own American vehicles that
right.
they then
And
sent to
so
their Canadian
the
operations.
possibility of them being stuck in Canada
Oh, it's so
was
cold. It's so cold
was
there.
not a happy experience.
Now,
so I don't know.
but I guess that comes back to one of your original points, is that if you're going to do this, call an expert first, find out the steps. What I really enjoyed speaking with you in our first interviews, you just make it simple. You're like, just do this, do this, do that. I take care of all the details, right? Because for you, it's in your sleep. For me, stressful. I don't know if I told you, but I actually bought a car in the States. I bought a car at auction and had to cross the border with it. It was a nice car, very nice car. But I took it to the dealership to have the changes made to carry it across the border. And I had been told it was going to cost me almost $1,000 to do it. And I'm in the parking lot of the dealership. And the guy that was helping me was just a lot guy. And he was helping me, and he was playing with the windshield wiper adjuster.
Right.
And he made all the changes right there through electronically. And he's like, yeah, if you go inside, they're going to charge you $1,000. I'll do it here.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it was so nice. I saved a ton of money on that, but I didn't even know that was how you did it.
Right.
And listen, on this channel, there are lots of car aficionados. There's people who collect cars, race cars, love cars, restore cars, and they're going to laugh that I didn't know how to do that. But they would have known. But the point is, I don't know what I don't know. And when everything's on the line and the paperwork matters, you really have to get an expert involved, or you're in some trouble, or you could be in trouble.
Right. And that's what we want to avoid. And that I feel, and I think it's also one reason this particular commodity, any type of vehicle, heavy equipment. I mean, we actually bring in such a huge variety of commodities, but this is my personal passion, and I actually help a lot of just, importers that are car aficionados.
Like collectors, or they just like.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
From
So
Japan.
import 25-year-olds. So you can import, if it hasn't been modified, you can import vehicles that weren't originally sold here. You can import from Japan, which seems to be the hot spot, as long as they're, to the month, 25 years old. They don't have to meet EPA and DOT requirements. So if you see those little, like, I don't know if you've ever seen
crazy right-hand drive little trucks.
Yeah,
and
like
I saw
the
one in
little
traffic
mini
today.
fire trucks, and it's so fun, especially driving around here. My son's he's a car. He just loves cars, and so he'll tell me, "Oh, I saw one of these or that," and I'm thinking, I probably brought that in. Like that was probably me.
Mom did that.
So.
I know that we've got at least one listener here who's a top fuel race team guy, and he holds a land speed record for motorcycle at Bonneville Salt Flats. Like, I know that's just one listener here. And there's a lot of people that just love, when you like working with tools, it's an easy extension to not just work with wood, but also with machine, like engines and stuff. So I'd be surprised in those cases. People probably already know how to bring vehicles either way across the border. But what I've always been actually shocked at is that people didn't think outside the box. If I need a truck and I can't find one here in Cleveland, start looking outside of Cleveland. It's not that hard. Now, you've got all of the United States, or if you can't find something in Saskatoon, everybody laughs when I say Saskatoon. Saskatoon, Moose Jaw, Medicine Hat, all those different fun names. But if you can't find something in Canada, expand your circle. But if you still can't, don't be afraid to look in the States or in Canada, either way. and then use an expert, like yourself, people who know auto. It's not brokerage. It's what's it called? Auto importing.
Yeah, and you can, I mean, we call it brokerage.
Okay.
But yeah, and also I don't mind, I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't mind reviewing, labels or things for people or advising. It takes, 5 minutes to advise someone and really keep them out of a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And I just love being able to offer that and help.
Yeah, I have a question. So I'm thinking about somebody you meet on, they're selling a vehicle on Facebook, and I'm interested in it. And I ask them for a picture of that DOT. DOT is Department of Transport, right?
Yes, a
And
transportation
EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency.
protection agency.
Yeah. What if they go, oh, you're trying to steal my identity? I don't want to take it. Is there any risk to the seller in sharing that label information?
No, I mean, no, not at all. The VIN number, I mean, you can look up a VIN number online and it will usually bring you up Carfax. I mean, information that you just using the VIN number. So it's information that's out there.
Oh, just because people can be worried about that, right?
Well, but for the VIN number, for the label. So sorry, I guess, see, that's my, no. So the EPA.
It's okay to say, no, Dom,
labeling,
you're wrong, because that's quite often the case. Yeah.
Well, the EPA labeling is specific to just the engine information, and it usually has the year and month that it was manufactured.
Sure.
The DOT labeling, yes, it does have that specific. It could have a Canadian maple leaf, which means that it was specifically manufactured for the Canadian market.
Okay.
However, some of those actually still have the proper, meets all FMVS, US FMVSS, or Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. And it has the VIN number and usually the manufacturer. So another thing to keep in mind is that, so that's definitely nothing really proprietary that would get anyone in trouble for sharing with me. And also, I need that information because it can help me, like if they wanted to know how much the brokerage was. There are certain pieces of information on those labels that tell me like what country it was manufactured in. That right there is going to tell us how much, the duty rate on the vehicle is based on what type of vehicle, if it's diesel, gas, the cc's on the engine, the country of manufacture, whether it's 2.5% or if it's a vehicle that was made in either US, Canada, or Mexico. If you can if you can have or submit to me, which I would first provide and you complete as the importer, or the shipper can complete it, a USMCA, which some people might know as NAFTA, but it's now USMCA.
It's now called USMCA, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that actually would be duty free. And also there are other fees involved, but it would save you those.
You just reminded me of something that we hadn't spoken about in our original, the prep for this, which was Mexico. So what if I wanted to bring in a funky Volkswagen? They're still making them down there, I think. Oh, your face just changed when I said, what if I wanted to bring a vehicle to the United States from Mexico, whatever reason? Is that something that's inside your area of expertise?
I can definitely provide information and guide people. We have done it. I have done a vehicle from Mexico. It would depend. Like if it were a company, I would have no issue. But usually there are specific requirements that a vehicle needs to leave Mexico. And also like that you would be required. So you would need a good presence on the Mexican side as well, because they have to it's not as simple as other countries.
Like Canada to the US is a lot simpler and a lot more of a
right, because there aren't certain requirements for it to leave the country of Canada, customs. For instance, if you were to export from China, it would be the same thing. You have to be approved by Chinese customs.
Really?
Right. And so what I found is that it's similar. There are some requirements that the government of Mexico
imposes.
Needs. Right.
Yeah. But that makes sense too, because they have their own economies there that they want to protect inside of all the agreements that we have.
Oh, yeah.
Just because it's fun to talk about, one of the things that I ask people is, why do you want to improve your business? And the first thing people say is money, but it's really not money. It's what you do with the money. And so the joke that I make, and I picked up this joke over the years in talking to and listening to business owners, is they want to tow a bigger boat to a nicer lake and a newer truck. So I know you can't import and export lakes, but what about boats? Do boats follow the same formula? Do utility trailers, do construction trailers follow the same formula? We can bring those back and forth as well.
Yes. And actually it was on my list of things to add that I thought maybe I was expanding too much, but actually as vehicles has sort of fallen in my lap and become our niche market, boats, aircraft. I do. Well, I mean,
so many of my listeners have their own aircraft.
I can't believe how many people are purchasing like small aircraft, like companies, or even individuals.
It's not as uncommon as I just made it sound, because I know that I interviewed a gentleman on the show a couple of months ago who makes lakes. He makes lakes for people in Texas, and he gets around by airplane because it's faster for him to do that. And he can usually land on a ranch. There's lots of room to land. So yeah, right. There's people here who have airplanes.
Well, and so, yes, we do a lot of boats, and actually a lot of boats between Canada and the US. And yes, you have to keep in mind that a boat has an engine. Any equipment that has engine that's not necessarily self-propelled. So in this case of a boat, usually there's a boat and a trailer. The trailer is not self-propelled, so you would have to meet DOT requirements, and it would have to have a U.S. admissible DOT label on it. The boat engine needs to have a U.S. admissible EPA label on the engine. So other types of things, like let's say a cement mixer or something that is pulled but is still something that maybe a builder or contractor would use, right, type of equipment that's not self-propelled but has an engine, we need to have a look at the label. And also, there are some size exemptions, right, but it's just always something I have to remember, like, wait a minute, is there an engine on it?
So this is fantastic. Thank you, because I know we've blown a lot of people's minds here, because first of all, I have this show so that I can help people think beyond Cleveland, beyond Saskatoon. You have to really think about we have to think about ourselves globally now, and the opportunities are there. And if you can spend $70,000 on a van where you live, but you can spend $50,000 or maybe $60,000 for a better quality one somewhere else and then have it brought in, why wouldn't you do that? And that's just smart business. That's really taking advantage of things. So I'm glad you brought that to mind. And then now you've given everybody an excuse to buy themselves a boat, snowmobile, a quad, a motorcycle, aircraft, whatever else there is, right? So that bass boat that people really want, you can get what you want at a deal, maybe. But talk to Erin first. Actually, what a good segue. So first of all, this works all across the United States. Just because you're in Seattle doesn't mean this is a Washington State thing. This works anywhere in the US to anywhere in Canada.
Correct. And remember, so as far as we're concerned, I can bring in anything at any US port, whether it's a land border, ocean, air, and then our presence on the Canadian side can do the same into Canada. And we work together also. For instance, there are, if any of your any of your listeners were, let's say, exporting something into Canada, something similar, we might be involved to meet some export requirements, and then our Canadian office can help with the import.
You guys just make it easy. Like
we make it easy.
Yeah, you make it easy. I love it. Thank you. Erin, if somebody wants to get in touch with you and ask you more questions or send you a DOT sticker picture, how do we find you in this big wide world?
Well, I would suggest that you just email me. My email is Erin, ERIN, at davidsonansons.com. Or you can go to our website, which is davidsonansons.com, and then you can just go to services and U.S. Customs Brokerage. There's also a little form that you can fill out with information, and it goes right to us, and we answer you back. But it would be, I think, the best to just email me.
Yeah, well, and you're the vehicle expert at Davidson anyway, so that's how you and I met. Yes. Excellent. Well, Erin, thank you very much for being on the show and sharing your insights. That is fantastic. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on.
For sure. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, Erin, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us on vehicle importation and brokerage. I'm sure we're going to find a way to bring you back again to share your insights, because that's the kind of business information that the people that you guys listening really want to hear. A couple of things that I wrote notes on here is that paperwork really, really matters. And so talking to Erin, and she's so open and forthcoming with stuff, get in touch with her if you're going to do this. Talk to her about these crazy stickers, what needs to be shown on the stickers, and whether the vehicle or the piece of machinery that you're looking at can be brought back and forth. And I wasn't kidding when I said bass boat or offshore, but like maybe that's something that you need to know about, or at least at the very least, boy, did we cover off some good conversation for you to discuss over a beer with your buddies this weekend. The other thing I got from Erin is you got to contact her before, because there's a lot of must-haves on the labeling. And then, of course, professionals like that make it easy. Yes, you and I can probably do the paperwork, right? But probably doesn't mean a lot when you're staring at a customs agent who has no sense of humor and wants to peel everything apart, including your belt, if you know what I mean. So, Erin, thanks very much for sharing the information. Folks, I hope you enjoyed that.